Hello everyone, and welcome to the sixth tutorial in our series. In the previous lesson, we learnt how to create our own functions and use them with different values to receive different results. In this lesson, we'll learn how to efficiently repeat code with loops, namely while loops, repeat loops, and for loops. Previously, we learnt how to create a function that runs a block of code whenever it is used. But what if we want to repeat some code? Copy and pasting the code multiple times or continuously writing function call statements would be really inefficient. Because what if we want to repeat some code 100 times or even 1,000 times? For example, we might want to continuously deplete a player's health until it reaches zero because they drank some poison. Writing 100 separate instructions would be really time consuming and it would be difficult to edit and keep track of. To simplify this, we can use one of Luau's loop structures. A loop structure repeatedly runs a section of code until a condition is met. There are three ways to create a loop structure in Luau: a while loop, a repeat loop, and a for loop. We'll cover all of them with our example. But before we start creating loops, we need to write down some key information about the player whose health we want to deplete. We need to know which player we are going to work with and the amount of their health. So let's create a variable for the name of our player and another variable for their health. Local player equals hiatus and local player health equals 100. Now to gradually reduce our player's health to 0, we will create a loop. We'll start with a while loop. To create one, we begin with the keyword while. And next to it, we write a condition that the while loop will check before repeating any code. So our condition will be while player health is greater than 0. And after that, we write do and hit enter, which should add an end for us. So while player health is greater than 0, do end. Now any code you write in the body of the while loop will be repeated as long as the condition remains true. So our while loop will continuously run for as long as the player health variable is storing a value larger than 0. To check if our code is working so far, we can add a print statement to the body of the while loop. So we can do print dealing damage to player. Dealing damage to player. And if you test the code now, we will run into a problem. Roblox crashes. And that's it for this tutorial. I'll see you in the next. The game starts to freeze up and become unresponsive because the while loop is constantly running without any pauses. The loop never stops because the condition for it to stop is never met. So it's putting a lot of pressure on the game and stops it from performing other tasks. Roblox detects and times out a script when it has been running for too long, for example in an infinite loop like this, so your studio doesn't always crash. To prevent our infinite loop from freezing the game, we can tell it to wait between each time it loops with a built-in wait function. So in the next line inside our while loop, we will call the function wait. We can pass a number of seconds we want the script to at least wait for before resuming, or we can leave it empty, which will make the script wait for the least amount of time possible, which is roughly 0.03 seconds. And now if you run the code, the game shouldn't freeze and the while loop should run fine. And we can see that the print statement is constantly writing to the output. So now that our while loop is running properly, we can use it to gradually reduce our player's health. Each time it loops, we can reduce their health by 1. So we will set the player health variable to itself minus 1. This is how you subtract 1 from a variable. So now the while loop should continuously reduce the player's health until it reaches 0, which is the condition for the while loop to stop running. And we can change the print statement to show us the player's health each time it changes. Player health colon player health. And now let's test the code. We can see it's running fine. And it stops once the health reaches 0, just as intended. So this is how we create while loops. They continuously repeat a section of code while a certain condition remains true. This also means that if we add another while loop after the first one, it will not start running until the first loop stops. So let's test that by creating another while loop, which replenishes the player's health back to 100. While, so the player health at this point should be 0, and we want to get the player health back to 100. So our condition will be while player health is less than 100, this time we will set the player health variable to itself plus 1. And again, we will print the player's health each time it changes. Player health. And don't forget to add the wait. Now, if you test the code, you can see that the first loop is still running fine, but we don't see the value of the player health increasing until the first loop finishes. So if we expand the output and scroll back up, the health only starts increasing from the second while loop once the first while loop brought the health to 0. So once the first while loop finished, the second while loop started. There are ways to make multiple loops run at the same time, but we'll cover those in a future lesson. Another thing you notice a lot with while loops and if statements is that many scripters tend to shorten their conditions. For example, while true do is a common way to write an infinite while loop. When you shorten a condition to something like if x then or while x do, it checks if x is either evaluated as true or false, just like it would evaluate any other condition. In lesson 3, we learned that false and nil are evaluated as false, and any value besides these two are evaluated as true. So that means the condition of if player then would pass, because the player variable is holding a string, and a string is evaluated as true in Luau. So this will become if true then. So this condition will pass. However, if you change the value of player to nil, now these conditions will not pass, because nil is evaluated as false. It is generally better to write your conditions as clearly as possible, but sometimes tricks like these are really convenient. Now let's move on to repeat loops. A repeat loop repeats a section of code until a certain condition is met. Let's create one to continuously deal damage to our player, just like we did with our while loop. We start with the keyword repeat, and then we hit enter, which should add an until for us. Now between repeat and until, you write the section of code that you want to be repeated. We want to reduce the player's health to 0, so in each loop we want to subtract the player's health by 1. So player health equals player health minus 1. And we'll also print the player's health so we can keep track of it. So print player health colon player health. And don't forget to add the weight. And now after until, we write the condition we want the repeat loop to check. So our condition will be until player health reaches 0. So the repeat loop will keep on repeating the code, which will subtract the player's health until it reaches 0. And if you test the code, you can see that it's working just as well as before. The health keeps on depleting until it reaches 0. Now you might be thinking, what's the purpose of having two different ways to create loops? Both while loops and repeat loops repeat a section of code until a certain condition is met. Is there a reason to use one over the other, or is it just down to preference? If you bring back our while loop, you might be able to spot a difference between these two types of loops. If you haven't, the difference is that a repeat loop checks the condition at the end, after running the code in its body, whereas the while loop checks the condition at the beginning, before running the code in its body. This means that a repeat loop will always run at least once, even if the condition for it to stop is met, whereas a while loop doesn't have to run at all, and this difference can be useful sometimes. Another thing about loops is that they can be broken early, before their finishing condition is met. We can do this by using the break command, exclusive to loops. In our repeat loop, let's break the loop once the player's health reaches 50. So we'll add an if statement at the bottom to check when the player's health reaches 50. So if player health equals 50, then break. And now if you test the code, the loop is running, and once it reaches 50, it stops. And the break statement works for all types of loops. So once the player's health reaches 50, the while loop should stop. So it's continuously decreasing until it reaches 50. Now it's stopped. So this is how we can finish a loop early, before its condition is met. The final loop that we'll cover in this lesson is the for loop. There are two types of for loops, numeric and generic, but we'll leave the generic for loop for a future lesson. Numeric for loops repeatedly run a section of code a specific number of times. This is what a numeric for loop looks like. It starts with the keyword for, followed by a variable, which will store a number. The number it stores will be the first number after the equal sign. Each time the loop repeats, the variable will be increased by the third number after the equal sign, which is known as the step or increment. The for loop will keep repeating the code in its body between the do and end until the control variable reaches the second number after the equal sign or gets as close as possible without exceeding it. So this for loop will repeat 5 times. The I variable will start from 1 and it will keep on increasing until it reaches 5. We can add a print statement to see how many times it has been repeated. So print repeated I times. And if you test the code, it shows that the for loop repeated 5 times. The step can be negative too, but then you must make sure that the starting value is greater than the ending value. So if you test the code, it will still repeat 5 times, but this time the I variable starts from 5 and ends at 1. And if you don't specify the step at all, the default value will be positive 1. So as you can see, it still repeats 5 times, and the I variable increases by 1 each time it loops. So let's create our own numeric for loop to again deal damage to our player. We start with the keyword for, and then follow it with the name of the control variable. We can name it health, and you'll see why we've chosen this name soon. After that, we add the equal sign, and then we specify the 3 values: the start value, the end value, and the increment. Our start value can be 100 because we want the player's health to start from 100 and reach 0. So if our start value is 100, our end value should be 0, and the increment will be negative 1. After that, we add the do keyword and hit enter, which should add an end for us. Now, between the do and the end, we write the code we want to be repeated. Since our control variable health will start from 100 and end at 0, we can simply set the player's health to the health variable, and that should be enough to fulfill the task of reducing the player's health. So player health equals health. And we'll also print the player's health to keep track of it. Player's health colon player health. And don't forget the weight. And now let's test the code. We can see that it's running just as well as before. So this is how you can create a numeric for loop to repeat a section of code a specific number of times, depending on the start, the end, and the step values. And that's it for this lesson. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. And as always, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to add them in the comment section and I'll try to respond as soon as I can. And if you'd like to practice some more, you can try creating more loops and adding functions to the mix too. You could create a loop that runs a random function a certain amount of times. And don't forget to join our Discord server. The link to it will be in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.